If you're worried about the impact that divorce can have on your children, you're not alone and you have good reason to be. It is true that conflict in the home can cause lasting repercussions in the lives of children. But it's also possible to go through the divorce process and not have it carry such negative consequences. And my guest here today is Parker Pannell. She is an associate attorney with Hargrave Family Law, and she herself is the child of divorce. And she's here to talk with us about some of the great things her parents did when they were going through their divorce, as well as some helpful tips to make things better for your children. Parker, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So you are a newly licensed attorney.
I am since October of 2024.
But you're not new to family law.
No, not at all. Yeah.
How old were you when your parents went through a divorce?
I was 9 years old when my parents filed for divorce and around 11 whenever their divorce was finalized.
And do you remember back when you were 9 years old what life was like in your home?
Yeah, I mean, I had a great childhood and a great upbringing. I think that whenever I was younger, I knew that there was slight conflict, but nothing that really impacted us too much. But I can't say that it was a huge shock when my parents told me that they were getting a divorce.
Do you remember how they told you?
I remember I have two little brothers, and they were also really young at the time, 6 and 3. So my 3-year-old brother at the time, he says now that he has no memory of them ever even being married. But they sat us down on the couch and kind of just told us that they decided that they weren't going to be together anymore, but they were always going to be there for us and love us, and that we would get through it.
And how were both of your parents involved in your life?
Yes, to such a heavy extent sometimes. They were always there for us in every way that they could be.
So what were some of the initial transitions that you remember going through?
Definitely the housing situation. I mean, we'd all lived in the same house for our entire lives. My mom ended up being the one to move out of the marital residence. And that was a big adjustment because that ended up meaning that we changed schools as well. But luckily, we were only one city over, so we were still close enough by to our familiar surroundings and things like that. But I think moving houses was definitely, and schools, was a big change.
And what did your parents do to help alleviate that to make that period of transition easier for you?
They were very open with communication with us and allowing us to talk to the other parent, because I think that that's a concern a lot of the times, that someone's going to be seeing their child less. You go from seeing them every day to now having a different possession and access schedule. My parents always made sure that we were having a good, meaningful connection with the other parent too.
Did you feel like you were able to have meaningful connection? I mean, I know in your family, we talked about this a little bit, but your dad had the expanded standard possession schedule, which is a little bit less time. It's not a lot less, but did you feel that as a child?
Maybe it to a little bit, but really not that much, because he was always at practices and school events and school meetings. And I knew no matter what that we had that Thursday night overnight. And I just got really accustomed to the schedule pretty quickly. And it was just something that became our new normal.
And you were able to make up that time by having phone calls whenever you wanted to
Oh,
talk.
yeah. I got my first phone right around the time that they got divorced, and could call my dad, text my dad whenever I wanted, and vice versa. Whenever I was with him, could call my mom, text my mom.
What were some things maybe that your parents could have done better?
Well, I think that it can be really hard to do, but because you're just going about your life, you don't know. This is something you've never dealt with before. But sometimes I wish that there would have been moments where we were kept out of things a little bit. I know they did probably try their best, but stuff slips through the cracks, and you might say something that you either regret saying or you wish you might have thought through more. I wish that I might have known a little bit less, just being at the age that I was. And I think it's really age dependent too.
What do you think your parents were not aware of?
How much that we knew. How much that we were seeing, even though they thought they might have been being sneaky or not having conflict in front of us. Kids are a lot more involved than you think they are and nosy.
Especially you, right?
Especially me, yes.
But I mean, I think that's a natural thing. Children are little sponges and they have these receptors and the radars and they know when things aren't right.
Just curiosity for sure. Just wanting to have a full grasp on what was happening around me and feel somewhat in control of my circumstances.
So as you grew up, so you were 9 years old when the divorce was filed and 11 when it was finalized. How were the teen years for you?
I had great teen years. I was really adjusted at that point to just having divorced parents. And when my parents first got divorced, I was one of the only people that I knew that had divorced parents. But by the time that I graduated high school, it was such a common thing. And I actually was able to help friends that had parents getting divorced and going through that. It just really became such a non-factor to me. It was just how my life was.
And were you able to focus on your activities and your friends without having to worry about the schedule and so forth? Yeah,
it got to a point where if there was needed flexibility there was 3 kids, me and my younger brothers. We all were involved in sports and different things with school. If we needed to switch a night here or there, or somebody needed help driving this person somewhere, it just became really natural and just like flowed for us. And we were able to go off script a little bit by agreement, but we always knew that we would fall back on that Thursday night overnights and first, third, and fifth weekend.
And that's kudos to your parents. I mean, we love to tell people that in a good divorce, hopefully you throw the parenting schedule in the drawer and never really look at it because the parents are able to communicate. And obviously that's not the situation for all families. But we were talking about one little hiccup that would happen over the issue of right of first refusal.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So hold on for just a second. Let's back up because we were talking about a lot of parents come into this thinking that this is a really good idea and that, if a parent's going to be traveling out of town for any period of time, they're obligated in the decree to call the other parent and give notice to the other parent so the other parent can exercise the right of first refusal, right? Is that clear as mud?
Yeah.
Explain that? Okay. So how would that bubble up in your family dynamics?
So I guess it's kind of a good thing and a bad thing. Both my parents really wanted to spend time with us and have us all the time. But it would pop up sometimes where either one of them would just be needed to go run something and we'd have a babysitter, or one of my grandmas would be in town. And then the other parent would be like, well, you didn't tell me that you were going to be gone for 2.5 hours, not just 2 hours. And that was the time frame that you needed to give me. So that would cause a little bit of strife sometime. And it can seem like a good thing to put in a decree, I think. But it can have some adverse consequences as well.
Yeah. And so one of the things we'll talk about is like the duration of time, right? Is 2 hours seems really intrusive. Right?
I think so too.
You have to let the other parent know every time you're going grocery shopping.
Exactly.
But, versus like an overnight or something, maybe if the other parent's traveling, that could make more sense.
Yeah.
But are there any other things you can think of that were sort of little hot button issues that you would advise parents about?
I think just doing your best to minimize what your kids see. It's really a hard time, not only in your life, but also in their life too. It's a lot of change, and change feels even bigger and scarier when you're little. So I think that minimizing the conflict that they might see, or just being willing to hear them out and being open and honest with them to a certain extent. So telling them what they need to know, not telling them everything.
And one of the things you were talking about was that both of your parents were very supportive of your relationship with the other parent.
Yeah, they were.
And that's a really good thing. It's when we talk about conflict, parents are really good about saying, well, I never say anything negative about the other parent. But, when you give the eye roll or you give the sigh or, the gestures sometimes can carry so much weight. If you're feeling contempt in your heart for the other parent, your child is picking up on that.
Yeah. And so a lot of it's like subconscious too. People probably don't even realize that they're doing the eye roll, the sigh, that kind of thing. Being supportive of the fact that the other parent is your child's parent, and talking bad about them can sometimes make the child feel like you're talking bad about half of them,
Yeah.
So being supportive of the relationship that your child has with your co-parent is really huge.
So why did you decide to go into family law?
Oh my gosh, I always knew I was going to do family law. That was the entire reason that I went to law school. I knew very early on, I think, that I wanted to be a lawyer. And so when I actually got real and I was going to law schools, I knew that I was going to practice family law. The main reason, I think, being that I'm a very empathetic person. I feel other people's feelings very deeply. I've always been like that. And so I thought that this would be a good career path for me as a child who's been through the things that I'm advocating for and advising people on. I can come at it from a different perspective as someone who's actually lived one of these orders and gone through this since such an early age.
Yeah, I really love your insight, just so I know when we're all kind of gathering around and talking about different possession schedules or whatnot, you always have good things to contribute.
Yeah, what works, what doesn't. I mean, because it's very different seeing something on paper versus actually living it and it being your day-to-day life.
One of the other things that I had asked you about was, I mean, can you imagine what your life would have been like if your parents hadn't gotten a divorce?
It would be so different and weird. I feel like looking back on it now, I mean, when it first happened, I remember being kind of embarrassed because, like I said, I mean, not a lot of people had divorced parents at that time. But I've learned so much and gotten so many opportunities from having divorced parents. I have 2 amazing step siblings, an amazing stepmom, basically an entire bonus family, if you want to call it that. I've learned to be flexible and how things are not always in my control. And it's just made me a really well-rounded person, I think.
Well, thank you so much for your willingness to come and share a little bit of your insight and perspective on what it's like to be the child of divorce. And of course, if you're not divorced, you might want one now and raise such great children like Parker. I'm kidding, of course. But if you would like to learn more about Parker and about her practice with Hargrave Family Law, you can check out her profile at our website, which will include a link below. And be sure to stay tuned for future episodes. Thank you.